Mount Holyoke and loss of a creed. When I was 16 years old, I left home for the first time and entered Mount Holyoke Seminary, now Mount Holyoke College. Homesick girls of 16, surrounded by strangers and awed by superiors, are doubtless extremely impressionable. Some aged divine from Boston was holding religious meetings at the seminary. It was impressed upon me, very strongly, that I ought to be converted, but how to become converted puzzled my brain and my heart. I knew that it was necessary to feel a conviction of sin, and contrition therefore, but, try as best I might, I was not able to realize the enormity of sin that I was supposed to have committed during the short 16 years of my childhood. However, one evening I was wrought up to the point of venturing upon a personal encounter with this ministerial personage, in a private room which seems to have been used as a sort of confessional. It had the desired effect and I became converted. This man told me that God had been giving me good things all my life, and he asked me what I had done for God, implying that I had done absolutely nothing, and that, at best, I was a most ungrateful creature. This argument appealed to my sense of justice, for upon reflection, I could not pick out any special thing that I had done for God, and, of course, justice required that I should do something in return for all that He had done for me. It gave me a working basis, and I resolved that, from that moment, I would do something for God, though just what assistance the mighty Creator wanted of such a babe was not quite clear in my mind. However, I was swept along on a wave of enthusiasm and found myself very happy. I was happy in praying for my benighted relatives, who had not been through a similar experience, and I went to my bed at night with songs of joy on my lips and in my heart. My youth, my love of study, and my opportunities may have had something to do with this happiness, and possibly would have been sufficient to account for it, even though the word religion had not been pronounced in my hearing. I believe there was, however, a new sense of being on the right track, of conscientiously endeavoring to do right, of being in harmonious relation with the power that I conceived as God. The great life and death struggle of maturer years, the desperate effort of the floundering soul to save itself, was yet to come. This period, at the age of 16, I count as one of the happiest in my life. But the religion, which I then professed, did not make me over. It did not remove the timidity from my nature, or blot out of existence certain other temperamental, and possibly inherited, traits, which were then beginning to torment me. This required analytical thought and brave effort. Nor, on the other hand, did it quench a certain fearlessness of spirit, which seems to have been born in me side by side with the timidity, and for which saving grace in my makeup, I have always been profoundly grateful. During my senior year at this school, Bible study was an important part of the curriculum, and it required considerable time each week to master the lessons which were recited on Sundays. One Sunday, the presiding teacher asked for the meaning of the words, "being covered with the righteousness of Christ." No one in the large class offered an answer, until I attempted one by expressing the idea that, because we have no righteousness of our own, we must be covered, hidden as it were, by that of Christ, in order to be saved. If I had said that we must attempt to make for ourselves a garment pure and righteous like that of Christ, I never should have regretted my words, but what I did say, I have regretted many times, and wished that I might have an opportunity to unsay. For the idea then in my mind was that of Christ standing garbed in ample white robe, so full that it could spread out like wings, completely hiding, from the view of a wrathful God, poor creatures like ourselves, garmentless or clothed in rags. My reply appeared to give satisfaction. Today I see not only ignorance, but cowardice in my words. Today I believe not only that we may have righteousness of our own, but that not until we do have such righteousness, can we or shall we be saved. Being righteous is salvation. As Christ set us the example, so must we follow, and as He was righteous, so must we be according to our light and our power. At Mount Holyoke, the discipline of the routine, which demands of everyone her best, is an invaluable factor in the development of character. I shall never forget the impression made upon me by the teachers of my day, through their spirit of consecration and lofty devotion to their chosen work. And I believe the same powerful influence is exerted there today. They grow accustomed to their work, they forget themselves, and they little realize the effect which the developed beauty of their lives makes upon the sensitive girl from the country, away from home for the first time in her life, for the first time brought into contact with her peers and superiors. The religious teaching of those years, why speak of it? Let them praise it or criticize it, who will? The true inwardness of it made it worthy, left its impress upon the pupil, and gradually cast into the shadow of inconsequentiality all outward observance. To the freed mind, the extreme exactions of conscientious orthodox Christianity, fearful lest it shall not do right, seem puerile. Yet, through all these different forms of religion, one sees the self-same effort of the soul, the effort to comprehend its true place in the cosmos and to find its true relation to God. It does not seem to me necessary for a person to be told, in the freshness of his youth, when he knows almost nothing about sin from any experience of his own, that a gulf lies between himself and God, that God has cast him out from his presence, that only in meek dependence upon the saving grace of another's virtue and the sacrifice of another's life may he be reinstated in the divine favor. Is it not better to present to the young mind the beauty of goodness, the delight of conforming to righteous laws as the natural way of living? If a Christ had within him a saving grace and a righteous power, it is enough to hold up his life as an ideal. And better for the youth to follow that ideal of his own accord, because it is shown to him to be altogether lovely, and not because he must fear dire punishment if he does not. Yet the thinker, and everyone may think, is bound to come out at last into spiritual freedom through any and every path. The instructors in this particular college who were there in my day will always be remembered by me as among the loveliest, loftiest, noblest characters it has ever been my good fortune to know. They set before their pupils the saving truth by its daily exemplification. Though there may have been grades among them, I make no exception, for at the institution founded by Mary Lyon, no one is ever called to the sacred work of teaching who has not already shown herself to be a consecrated soul. Yet, when I returned to my home, I saw that my father, who was a close student of nature, but passed for a skeptic in matters of religion, however much I might pray for him, could no more change his nature than the leopard could change his skin. I felt there must be something wrong with my belief. I was asking God for that which was contrary to laws of his own making. My reason showed me that facts are unalterable, that the unalterableness of things is what makes them facts. My belief was a changeable thing. My belief must accommodate itself to facts, for facts would never adjust themselves to it. And my oldest sister was a lovely person. She was lovely to look at, kind and gentle in her actions. Her sweet voice and her musical talent made beautiful music in the home. She was a second mother to us all. Why, then, should I wish to change her nature? Her nature was, in my opinion, quite adorable. Yet she somehow seemed to lack a religious creed of which I could approve. She believed, if we do well here we shall do well hereafter, but she had no elaborate scheme of salvation, such as had been drilled into me. An angry God, an incarnation, a sacrifice, an atonement, and the hiding behind his garments. Again, my philosophy must somehow be changed, so as to include this motherly girl, for I could not possibly believe that a good God would condemn her. This beloved sister passed out of the body in 1881. My mother always has been, and is today, in her extreme old age, devoted to her church and her creed. Yet her charity has been of the broadest kind, and she was never coercive in matters of religion. Blessed be mothers like mine. In a very short time after leaving college, I felt my religious creed slipping from me. I could not hold it. It did not satisfy my requirements. As is usual, I believe, with devotees who cut loose from the bonds of their early faith, I swung to the other extreme and clung to no dogma at all. For a brief period, I experienced a sort of exultant, reckless joy in my newly acquired independence. It was delightful to think that I was not bound to accept as authoritative any religious creed or any code of philosophy laid down in any book. I was, after all, arbiter of my own fate. I could do as I pleased, so long as I did not positively injure others. I might be a creature that was to live for all eternity, for aught I knew. I knew nothing about it. But, I reasoned, if this be so, there is time enough for learning one's lessons. I shall reach my destination in time or eternity, and if I dilly-dally a little on the way, it only hinders my own progress and harms no one else. Was this all? No, there made itself heard within me a voice which said to refrain from injury to your neighbor is not enough. You must do no harm to yourself. You are bound to your fellow creatures. Any injury to yourself will necessarily be felt by them. You must preserve inviolate the purity of your own nature. You must seek knowledge and you must diffuse light. Yeah, I was a creature of moods, now happy, now the reverse, altogether subject to them, and suffering much from self-condemnation. I do not, however, claim a monopoly in suffering, nor do I propose to discuss these uninteresting things here. Further than to say that, as soon as I found that I need not be slave, but might be master, of both physical sensation and mental mood, I began to make some headway. And I believe it was the reading of Plato that first gave me an insight into this important truth. Means of livelihood. I had a great desire to live in a large city where I might come in contact with all phases of life and take advantage of the opportunities which such a center affords. After leaving school, I resided a short time in Philadelphia, where I practically began the battle of life. From the time I set foot in Boston, in 1881, my hands and my mind have been fully occupied, and the gaining of a sufficient livelihood has been a comparatively easy matter. I was engaged, from the very first, in stenographic and clerical work, mostly stenographic. For a few years, I occupied a position in the office of a commercial firm. From 1885 to 1899, I served as official stenographer in the office of what was then the Board of Police of the City of Boston. Reporting hearings, conferences, conversations, and during the last 5 years of that period acting as private secretary to the chairman of the board. From 1900 to 1902, I was private secretary to the water commissioner of the city, whose office was at City Hall. From 1903 to the present time, 1909, I have been engaged in the office of a bureau of the Massachusetts State Board of Agriculture. These several periods stand out clearly in my own mind, and reference to them may have to be made in the following chapters. In addition to this regular occupation, I had other work which occupied much of my spare time, it being mostly, however, of the same nature as my daily work. In Philadelphia, I had studied a system of shorthand writing, which was then new, a system which, its author claimed, was equal to any of the older systems in its adaptability, and yet was much more easily acquired. Soon after reaching Boston, I was asked to teach the system, and from that time on, for the next 10 or 12 years, I had all the private pupils I could well attend to, teaching both by correspondence and by personal lessons. I was obliged finally to drop this, on account of the increasing pressure of other work. The Civil Service Law of Massachusetts was enacted in 1884. The rules went into effect early in 1885, and were thereafter applied as rapidly as possible to the various departments of public service. Henry Sherwin, who has been chief examiner for the civil service from 1884 to the present day, was just beginning to gather around him a corps of assistants in his special work of examination, a work which has grown enormously since its initiation. Soon after my own examination, I was appointed one of the examiners, having been a member of one board continuously from that time to this, and serving from 1902 to 1907, inclusive as a member of 2 other boards. As I look back, I can see many events which apparently happened, yet it seems to me now that nothing really ever happens. That is our word for something which seems to come by chance, but which may, in reality, have been a long time in preparing. If one has a purpose in life, or a serious intent, the person and the event are somehow brought together when the time is ripe for the accomplishment of the purpose or the furthering of the intent. For instance, when I began teaching shorthand, my system was not perfected. The author was making improvements in it, and I did not feel that I had it sufficiently at my command to undertake the teaching of it. Yet I was afraid to let the opportunity slip. I had a dim notion, even then, of unused organs becoming atrophied, and of lost opportunities blocking the appearance of others. I looked at life in its youth as a narrow stream of water running between high banks. So long as the stream does not swell, gains no accretions, it cannot branch off into other channels or flow out into meadow lakes. And so I accepted the task, my pupils agreeing to follow me in any changes which might be introduced, and the system was thereafter gradually perfected. About this time, it happened that William H. Lee, who for many years filled the position of clerk of committees for the city government, wanted to know something about the new system of shorthand and engaged me to teach it to him. It happened again that in the year 1885, the charter of the city of Boston was amended by the legislature of Massachusetts. And, among other changes made, the control of the large police force of the city was taken from the mayor and city council and put into the hands of a commission of 3, who were appointed by the governor of the Commonwealth, to whom they were answerable for the proper management of the force. Mr. Lee was appointed one of the members of this first Metropolitan Board of Police, serving for 9 years. When he took office, in 1885, he was broad-minded enough to see that the position of reporter for the board could not improperly be filled by a woman, in which opinion his fellow members of the board coincided. At that time, there were comparatively few women occupying positions as official stenographers or court reporters, though there are many such today. There was apparently very little significance attaching to the question of whether I should or should not do a little teaching, whether I wished or did not wish to spend my time in that way. But if I had not undertaken it at just the time that I did, I should never have been drawn into the particular associations or into the particular stream of events, the outcome of which seems to me of sufficient importance and interest to put upon permanent record and offer to others. That matter remains, however, for the reader to decide for himself. My years in the police department were of the greatest benefit to me, disciplining me in many ways. The nature of the work required the concentration of all my powers in order to accomplish it with any degree of satisfaction to myself. The humanism of our common life, in aspects humorous and again interesting even to pathos, was often brought out in occurrences which took place before my eyes. And the camaraderie of my daily associations, deepening in some instances into the sincerity of friendship, will long be treasured in my memory. Far be it from me to belittle any kind of work, of any grade whatever, performed in public or private capacity. The machinery of government of this great country must be kept moving. The greater the skill and the intelligence of the thousands of men and women who stand behind the wheels, the better the government. And what is government for but to serve the people? Serve them how? By helping them to live healthy, normal, peaceful, progressive lives. Yet, all the while, there has been with me an undercurrent of unrest, a feeling that someone else might fill my place just as well or better than I, and a secret wish that I might do some little work in the course of my life that should be of a different grade and of more permanent value. And why is it of any consequence to speak here of my work at all? It is simply this: since I have been trusted by city and state, my work generally approved and placed on file among public records, and since I have been accredited with sanity and a fair degree of intelligence, I ask in all humility that the same courtesy and confidence be extended to me when I offer records of other matters, of an entirely different nature from that which is known as red tape of government work.